Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, I want to share with you Frostburn. This is a magicka warden PVP build like no other. As you see, it has 40,000 health, we have over 5,000 spell damage. With our sets, our regen is 2,000 plus. It is actually stupid. This has a tank level of defense, but damage dealing stats. It's amazing. With this one though, I'm going to go through and break it all down for you, show you how to set it up, the skills, the sets, everything you need to know. And yes, this does use scribe skills to amplify it further. That said, it will work without scribing, so don't panic, and it does use a mythic too, so you do need access to that. As always though, if you like my videos, likes, comments, shares and subscribes really helps out, and it helps stay up to date with future content. And a massive thank you to everyone at Patreon. If you are a patron or a YouTube member, you get exclusive content, early access and much more. There's details down below. But with this one, what are we doing? Firstly, race-wise, you have a few options. You either go as a Dark Elf, which allows you to be a vampire, which is phenomenally good. This will give you more max resource, flame resistance, and weapon and spell damage. It is one of the best races, in my opinion, for PvP. The vampire is such a strong passive because of undeath. So if you're unaware, undeath is a passive down here, and it reduces your damage taken by up to 30%. This is a defensive set as a passive. It is ridiculously strong. So with that said, you want to be a vampire because this is so strong, and Dark Elf, well, it just offsets the weaknesses. So my suggestion would be a Dark Elf. That said, I do use a Breton on live with no issues. I just can't be bothered to transmute the race and stuff. It just costs money and I don't want to waste it. So Dark Elf would be like min-max, Breton works, High Elf works, all could even work, Argonian would work. The race won't make or break the build, just change a glyph or two. As with the attributes, we've gone everything into health. And you're probably thinking, like, why would we go into health so high? So unbuffed, we have 35,000 health. When we put our toughness on, we go up to 38,000. And with our Death Dealer's feat, which is what's climbing right now, it goes up to over 40,000 health. Health is the most stat dense thing that you get. And on top of this, with being a warden, we can amplify it with the toughness passive. So you end up getting even more value out of this extra health. So health is the way to go. The damage increase by going all magicka is not worth it. I have tried it. And with Death Dealers, we have a high enough stamp pool to roll loads. And we got really high regens because of our second set. So this works really well. Mundus wise, I use the Lover Mundus. This is the most damaged Mundus out there. That said, you could use something like the Apprentice if you want to have spell damage to get a bit more healing power, but our healing is based on our max health, so you're not going to get much bang for your buck there. So I find the Lover is the most versatile for just offensive power. And if you play in no CP Battlegrounds or you're new to the build and magicka warden in particular, I would recommend the Atronach for more sustain, just because the class as a self is a bit spammy, so you're better have an extra sustain and then add more damage as you get used to it. For the consumables, we are using Smoked Bear Haunch. It's max health, it's stam and mag recovery. The magic recovery is really helpful because Warden has to spam skills a lot just with the nature of the class. And that stam recovery is really helpful as Warden is a meaty kind of range class. It's a bit weird. So like most classes, generally when you play, you either play really far away at max range like this, or you play in melee. Warden though plays kind of in this middle about here, so you have like this mid-range sort of combat, but you're still close enough to be stunned and snared and just pressured by melee people quite often. And so because of that, having the extra stam sustain from here is really helpful. You could use Jaws of Mistral, which is the cheaper version, that is really nice. And if you can sustain fine without that, like, needing that stam, you could go with Sugar Skulls, which is just more damage and more max stat, or kind of Citrus Fillet as a kind of mix between health, max magicka, and also magicka recovery. So this is a good option too. Potion wise, we use tri-stat potions. They cover all bases. If you're low on health, this will get you out of trouble. If you need stam, you're going to die because you can't CC break. If you need mag, you can't heal. So this covers everything you need. If you are fighting Nightblades, then detection potions are advised. And if you are in group play, immovability potions are also very helpful too. as with the skills, what are we doing? Well, I just want to buff up just to give you an idea of what kind of values you would expect. And just note the Death Dealers isn't procced fully on this. So the tooltip will be up like slightly higher. Our Frost Reach is 8.3k. It's almost 9,000 fully buffed. And it's about 15k dot. Frost Reach is an ice spammable, which has a dot on top of it. And not only that, it also procs a passive down here, which is really nice, this Glacial Presence. It increases damage if you're chilled by 669. This is 700 fully buffed. And what's nice with this spammable is it applies chilled on the initial hit. So as soon as we hit them, that chilled procs, which means this passive procs as well. So you end up getting a lot of extra damage from this passive. As you can see, 760 already, and it goes up and up and up and up. So I think it's like 800 or something when it's fully buffed. So you just add an extra 800 to this, and you can see for a spammable, this ends up being almost 10,000 when you factor in the other thing. So it's a really good spammable. And I've been asked this a few times, why do we use an Ice Staff? Warden has a passive down here called Piercing Cold. It increases your damage by 12% with an Ice Staff. That is why Ice Staff is like the best in slot thing for Warden, because it's such a good staff. We then use Deep Fissure. This is a delayed burst skill, minor and major breach. Really good skill. We then have a Scribe skill, Dazing Soul. This is a stun. In my opinion, this is a necessity. It gives you a stun that you can use at range, it applies a dot, and it hits major defile. That defile makes it hard for people to heal, which is awesome. The stun means you can line up your combos much easier. And what's nice is that when we use this, we can now use Polar Wind instead of Arctic Blast. Polar Wind is a significantly stronger burst still than Arctic Blast, even if you stack damage. So when this is like fully up, it's like about 15,000 tooltip with like a 4,000 heal over time. It is stupidly strong. It hits you and an ally too. So by having this stun here now means we can now run a better heal and we still have a stun. And the dot on it helps kind of make up for the fact we don't have that AoE pulse from Arctic Blast. So you still have similar damage anyway. You just get better healing and a more reliable stun. I then have a flex spot. And when I say a flex spot, this is a choice for you. Vector Infection is one of the better skills for this because it gives a dot on them. It almost does like 60% more damage on second cast. So often you just want to like double cast it. And what's worth noting is that if you use your Ice Reach, then this, it will go up even higher. So this becomes a really nasty dot. You can change this though, and if you're playing in Cyrodiil, for example, you may want to change this for Shimmering Shield. This is phenomenally good. It absorbs ranged attacks, so 3 ranged attacks, you take 0 damage. It gives you major heroism, which is ult gen. That is phenomenal. It's such a hard buff to get, and that ult gen means more Dawnbreakers, which means more damage. So this is a really good thing to have, and if you're fighting sorcerers a lot on your server, then this will really help, as this counters sorcerer pretty much instantly. All of their skills are, you know, direct damage. Crystal Frag, direct damage. The spammable Crushing Shock, direct damage. It's all projectile. It gets used by this. Overload also gets absorbed by this. So this is a really, really strong skill. For Battlegrounds, I would typically go with Vector Infection, just because you don't need that extra mitigation. But if you are in Cyrodiil or IC, Shimmering Shield is a really good option. Alternatively, you could chuck on an extra heal of choice. So you could use anything that you like really. Living Trellis, Lotus Blossom, Nature's Grasp, etc. The 5th skill is Bird of Prey. This is our movement skill. It gives us minor berserks and more damage, and it's snare immunity. Really good skill. If you're in group play, you may want to use Deceptive Predator just for more mitigation, but it's not needed. And the ultimate, as you saw, is Dawnbreaker. So I'm just going to buff up. And our Dawnbreaker tooltip is 15,500 with a 17,000 dot. And again, this goes up with our Death Dealers. So this is like 18,000 fully buffed. It's really freaking high. So really nasty, just ultimate here. And it's dirt cheap. Back bar, we have Ice Fortress. We have Resolve and Vigor, 18,000 heal. Polar Wind, this is almost 14,000 buffed. I think it's 16, 17 by a keep. And it's a massive heal over time. We then have Blue Betty, which is a resource sustain buff. It gives us major sorcery, which is more damage. And it's also a mini cleanse. And a big tip with it, and I do this a lot of my Battlegrounds and stuff, is if you double cast it, you can proc the minor toughness for free at the start of the combat. So this is a really good way to just get slight free healing, get that extra health going. And then we have Lotus Blossom as the final skill. This is here because it's for Major Prophecy, which is our crit chance. So when we have this on, we end up having a crit chance of 27%, which is pretty decent. So that really does help with that crit, which is more burst if we do land those. And then Bat Bar, I have Northern Storm. Northern Storm hits like a truck. So I'm just going to buff up and show you the tooltip of Northern Storm. And note that the tooltip does update between the bars. It's almost 7,000 every second. And this will go up higher and higher, about 8k when it's fully buffed with Death Dealers. So it absolutely melts people. And what's really nice now is that we can do our Northern Storm, switch bar and then go for that stun with the Dazed and Soul that would stun them. And they have to eat this Northern Storm whilst they're stunned. It's a lot of damage. So again, that synergy between that Scribe skill and Northern Storm is phenomenal. Talking of that Scribe skill, how do you make it? To make it, you want to use Stun, Lingering Torment, and Defile. If you don't have Defile, because you do need to find it, you can use anything as a flex spot in that place. Vitality is a really good option because it will increase your passive healing anyway. So I would consider using one of those, but you could change it. So Vitality is great, Intellect is nice, but you get this from potions anyway. Cowardice can be useful, but again, you need to find this. So I would personally go Vitality just because you can find this from the Mage Guild, which means you don't need to farm it. It's just a in-world script that is always there. So this is what I'd use as a like stopgap if you don't have the right scripts. The next thing I want to do is go through the CP and then also the sets. For the champion points, I'm using Fighting Finesse, which is more crit damage, Focus Mending, which is more healing, Master Arms, which is more damage, and Ironclad. You might notice that I only have one defensive CP as such, but this Focus Mending is extra healing, which is kind of a defensive CP, and this is also increased crit healing too. So these two combined kind of negate the fact that we only have one defensive CP here. And we have Master Arms, which buffs our direct damage. So our Master's Ice Staff that we use, the Ice Reach, is really good, and this just really helps. You could change this though for a different one of choice. For the red ones, I use Celerity. Movement speed is vital on Warden. If you can't get away, you will die. So this is a must. Survival Instincts, this is really good, but this could be swapped for something like Bastion if you fight against a lot of sorcerers. But I would kind of keep it if you can. We then have Pain's Refuge, which is more damage reduction, and Sustained by Suffering, which is even more sustain. If you want to add some more health, because you get that toughness, this is really worth considering. That Boundless Vitality is also more healing, and Fortified is also worth considering too. For the green ones, it's whatever you like. I always get Steed's Blessing, but whatever you like is up to you. But that's kind of the main stuff there. The last thing now is to go through the sets. And if you like the build and the videos and stuff, likes and comments really help. But if you haven't done so, do subscribe. Loads of you watching are still not subscribed, and it really helps out more than you realise. Also, if you want to support, there's details down below on Patreon or on YouTube. You get exclusives and much more. For the sets, we are using Master's Ice Staff. This reduces the cost of Destructive Touch by 10%, and it gives you 600 weapon and spell damage for 4 seconds. It is stupidly good. The normal one has this 2-piece anyway. If you can get perfected, you get this extra 103. For a 2-piece item set, this is the strongest set in the game in my opinion. It is such a strong set. If we look at our damage, so my spell damage is 4,300 at the moment. If I cast this, 5,100. It's gone up 800 already just with that buff, even though it says 700. It is a really strong buff. And if you have like a weapon glyph on it, can go up even higher. I then use Sharpen on this, and we use a glyph this time rather than a poison. You use a disease glyph because this will proc Minor Defile. So what that means is you have Minor Defile here, which is reduce their healing, and you also have Major Defile from this skill. So by having the disease glyph, you have Major and Minor Defile now built into your build, which is really good. So it feels like a Necro with their reducing their healing, but you have really good damage and you're a tank. It is stupidly broken. You can use poisons if you do prefer though, and double dot poisons are kind of the go-to in all honesty, but the Defile glyph is really worth considering that foulness. The bat bar set is Wretched Vitality. Wretched Vitality adds recovery, weapon and spell damage, and if you put a major or minor buff on you, you get more sustain. What this means is, if you look at our magic sustain at the front bar, we have 1600. We go into combat, we proc that set only. We now have, it's 2100. So it adds so much sustain. And obviously with potions, we're on like 2600 sustain. It is stupid how much like recovery we have on this build. Wretched Vitality is a phenomenal set. I did experiment with, as you'll see, with Rallying Cry. And Rallying Cry and Wretched Vitality give you almost identical damage numbers. Rallying Cry was like less than 1% damage on tooltips. But you had slightly less pen, which then meant that you actually had similar damage when you actually added it all up. The difference is Rallying Cry will give you more crit resist, which then means you can run more divines to offset that, which I did experiment with, and I still came with very similar results. The difference was that we lost 500-600 stam sustain, so having tried both on live, I think Wretched Vitality is the better one. And not only that, if you're in a group who has Rally already, they can give this to you on top. So you've got the benefit of all the sustain, and you're probably going to get Rallying Cry from somebody else anyway. It's such a common set. So go with the Wretched, it is the better set in my opinion for this. We are using a sword, defending, and a shield impen. The glyph on the shield could be health, that would be the best one, but you can put whatever you like, so I've left it blank for you here. And the glyph on the weapon, it doesn't matter, I'll use poisons ideally, but that's up to you. For the helmet, we use 1 Baron Thrisk, which is 1 recovery. This could be Magma Incarnate. Baron Thrisk was chosen though because it's easier to get. If you're unsure, you can go into Cyrodiil and go into an Imperial City, and there are little vaults around here, and you need key fragments to be able to access them to buy keys. The key fragments are tradable, so you can buy them from a guild trader and come here and open the chests for free, like with gold essentially, which means you can get this item really fast. So this is really worth considering. I then have Ice Furnace. This is a dungeon set. I have Reinforced on the chest, and it's tri-stats on the head, the chest, and the legs, and it's magicka on all the small pieces. To load out the build, you want to have Master's Ice on the front bar, Wretched on the sword and the shield. You then want Wretched on the shoulders, and the sash, and the hands. You then have Ice Furnace on the chest, the legs, and the feet. This will maximise your armour values as much as it possibly can be. We then have Ice Furnace on the necklace and the ring. Both the necklace and the ring are infused, and I've gone with 1 spell damage and 1 magicka recovery. If you are a Breton, you can change this to be a damage glyph as well, because you have that sustain already. And we've gone with Death Dealer's Feet, and again an infused glyph, which is spell damage. How this works is that Death Dealer's is always on, Ice Furnace is always on, whatever bar we're on, Ice Furnace is always there, and then we turn on Wretched Vitality when we switch to the bat bar. We get the buff on our character for 15 seconds, it still stays on the front bar, so it transfers over. And then this gives us a free piece to have a monster piece, which is generally better than 1 trainee for this build. But that's kind of how this is loaded out. If you have any questions about the build or about how to use it, let me know in Discord or in the comments. Equally, you could jump into my streams where I do stream every Saturday night at 9 PM UK on YouTube. But I'm going to kind of call this here. This is a really fun build to play. There is gameplay on the way. I've just put these separate. And just a quick disclaimer, this part of the video is recorded on the PTS just because it saves me gold having not to gold everything. On the live server, I only gold the weapons and I have purple everything else. But yeah, that's it. Any questions or if I've missed something, let me know below. But I'm going to say a huge thanks to everybody on YouTube, members and Patreon who just help make the videos possible with their support. If you do want to support, continue the channel and so on, then there's details down below. You get early access, exclusive content and much more. But until the next video or stream, take care. Thanks for watching and bye!